Hi, 7th graders. We're on lesson 10-2. It starts on page 534 in your textbook. Our learning target is graphing quadratic functions. So we previously talked about linear and nonlinear functions. Now we are going to look at quadratic functions, which look a little bit different than linear functions, which remember linear functions are a straight line when they are graphed. A quadratic function is a U-shaped, or we call it a parabola, and it opens upward or downward. So we know a function is quadratic if it has an exponent in it and if the greatest power, or if it has an exponent of 2, basically. So here's an example, y equals 3x squared. The greatest power of the variable, so our variable is x, the greatest power is 2. Okay, so let's talk about graphing quadratic functions. Well, first of all, this is an example of a quadratic function. It's this is what we call a parabola. So see, it's a U-shaped and it's opening upward, and so this is a quadratic function, also known as a parabola. So if our equation is y equals x squared, if we think way back to our function tables, we can set it up exactly the same. So we have our x values, and then we have our function, which is x squared, and we put our x value in for x. So we're substituting it in for x and getting our answer, which is y, and then we have our coordinates. So because it's x squared, well, we know that, for example, negative 2 squared, which is negative 2 times negative 2, is 4. But we also know that 2 squared is 4 also. So a positive and a negative number squared is going to be the same number. So that is how we get the U-shaped graph. Because we can see for 0, it's 0, 0. If x is 1, 1 squared is 1. But if x is negative 1, negative 1 squared is also 1. And then the same for 2 and negative 2. So also what we want to look at, because we know that we remember slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, which is different, obviously, than this. But we remember if the slope is positive, then we have a positive line, or a line going in a positive direction. Here, we have a positive number in front of x squared, which even though there's not a number, it's still positive because it's 1. So therefore, we have a positive open, or an upward U-shape, or an upward parabola. So it's a positive quadratic function. If we look at y equals negative 2x squared, we do the exact same thing, and we have the exact same numbers for x, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. We substitute our x's in for, or we substitute our values in for x. So negative 2, we do order of operations. So negative 2 squared is going to be 4, but then times negative 2 is negative 8. So we have negative 2, negative 8, and so forth. So now we can see that our parabola is facing the opposite direction. It's going downward. And this is because we have a negative 2 in front of our x squared. All right? So we figure out our values for x, put it into the equation, and then make our points and graph according to that, which is the same exact thing that we do for linear functions. If we have y equals x squared plus 2, okay, we graphed y equals x squared right here. Oops. Okay, this is going too fast for me. Okay, y equals x squared, we can see looks like this. If we look at x squared plus 2, we can see that it looks exactly the same. If I can get it to stay up here. except it's moved up a little bit. So this is our y-intercept, and because we didn't have a y-intercept before, or we did, but there wasn't one in the equation, so then it's always at 0. But if x is 0, and we put 0 into our equation, 0 squared plus 2, well then our point is going to be 0, 2, because we still have to count for that plus 2. So it's the exact same graph, except now it's moved up on our y-intercept, or on our y-axis. It's moved up 2. Okay? So I want you to notice the difference between the positive and negative quadratic functions, the upward and the downward parabolas, and then where it's placed on the y-axis, which again, remember, is our y-intercept. For this one, our y-intercept is 2. Okay, we have y equals negative x squared plus 4. So we did negative x squared before. So it's a downward curve. Okay, but it's plus 4, which tells us it's going to cross at 4 on our y-axis, because we know if we put in 0 for x, we're going to get 0, but then our y is still 4. So that just means that we're not going anywhere on our x. We're staying at 0 and going up 4. So notice how it's still downward. It's negative, pointing towards negative, but it still can cross on the positive side of the y-axis. So we have negative x squared plus 4. We do the exact same thing again. Here's our x values. Plug them into our equation, get our y's, and then put our x and our y together and graph. Okay? I know that you don't have graph paper, but in your notes, well, I hope that you put some notes down for those graphs that I talked about. In your notes, I would like you to pick one of these equations, and then I would like you to fill in the function table and just kind of make a makeshift graph as best as you can, or not even a graph, just graph it and show me how the parabola would be, if it would be positive or negative, and where it would cross on the y-axis. So pick one of these, and then you will show me in class tomorrow. All right, and then make sure that you look back in your book if you have questions, and make sure you take the 10-2 NICU quiz. Have a good night.